The world's oceans are so underexplored that if you dive deeper than 3,500 meters, there's a good chance of discovering a new species unknown to science. There's also a good chance you'll find debris and garbage. Oceans cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface. The average depth of the oceans is about 3.7 kilometers, and since light can only penetrate to a depth of 100 meters, darkness reigns deep underwater. Let's push this statement one step further and conclude that since most of the planet is covered by water, it means that most of the Earth exists in total darkness. Water in the oceans accounts for almost 96% of the Earth's water. The portion of fresh water compared to seawater is so small that if the fresh water flowing into the ocean were spread over the surface of the ocean, it would be about 1.25 meters thick. 94% of all life on Earth lives in water. This means that all of us who live on land belong to a very, very small minority. So, what mysteries lurk in the depths of the oceans? The deeper we go, the more curious it gets. It seems that we know more about the surface of Mars than about the ocean floor of our planet. What's going on in the deepest places? We didn't know it all, at least not until recently. Lack of light and extreme pressure make this part of the ocean difficult to explore. Today, we're going on a journey into the very depths. We're going to find out what the bottom of the ocean looks like, what it consists of, and what happens there. Who knows what we will find there? We are going to dive deep to the places with the most alien conditions. What has been found in the deepest places of the ocean? So, our imaginary submersible sets off. We will make short stops at important markers until we get to the bottom. 40 meters is the maximum depth for pearl collectors diving without any scuba diving equipment. They do this by holding their breath. Below that mark, the increasing pressure of the water forces air to escape from the lungs. That is why it is the maximum depth for recreational divers. 200 meters, 90% of all aquatic life exists in the layer of the world's oceans, to a depth of 200 meters because light still somehow manages to penetrate through the water. This creates the conditions for phytoplankton to grow. Its vast biomass feeds small crustaceans. In turn, those are food for fish and large mammals like whales. As we dive deeper, there's less light and less life. We enter the twilight zone. 332 meters is the record for deep diving with scuba diving equipment. No one has been able to dive deeper without a bathyscaphe. 565 meters is the maximum recorded diving depth of the emperor penguin. Photosynthesis is almost non-existent here. There is not enough light, therefore there is no vegetation. However, we can find a relatively large number of fish, but for most of them, it is no longer a friendly environment. They do not seek a good life here. Instead, they go deeper in an attempt to hide from predators. 1,000 meters is the end of the twilight zone. At this depth, there is less than 1% of sunlight, but the inhabitants have learned to emit their own light. They use bioluminescent chemical reactions to attract prey or deter predators. Up to a depth of 1,000 meters, there are siphonophores. They are the closest relatives of jellyfish. They live in colonies clustered around a long tube. This tube serves as their common digestive system. As we go deeper, life forms become more bizarre and alien. 1,027 meters is a record for a military submarine dive. As we continue the dive, we enter the midnight zone where total darkness reigns. Food is extremely scarce, and ocean life is forced to conserve energy. Most animals do not hunt actively. Instead, they drift and collect sea snow, which consists of microparticles of dead fish remains, plant feces, dust, and sand. 2,200 meters is the depth to which giant octopuses and even larger sperm whales dive. Sometimes they even engage in deadly battles at this depth. We can also find the anglerfish, which has a luminescent fin ray to lure other fish for its prey. The glowing bait looks like juicy food. In fact, the luminescence comes from symbiotic bacteria. 6,100 meters is the depth at which transcontinental internet cables are laid on the ocean floor. More than 90% of the ocean is about 6,000 meters deep. This depth is considered the conditional bottom of the ocean. However, there are many places where the ocean sinks below its own floor, much deeper. We're talking about the famous oceanic locations. Let us visit the deepest and most famous one. The Mariana Trench is located on the border of two lithospheric plates. It was formed due to subduction, the process of one plate being submerged under another, specifically the Pacific Plate under the Philippine Plate. It took on its present form relatively recently, about 180 million years ago. At that time, the first mammals already existed on land. Contrary to misconceptions, the Mariana Trench is not a hole in the seabed, but a massive formation, measuring 2,742 kilometers, more than 5 times the length of the famous Grand Canyon in the United States. It is also relatively narrow, averaging about 70 kilometers in width. With such dimensions, it is not surprising that there are several places within it that are more than 10,000 meters deep. The Challenger Abyss is the most famous of these. It is located in the southwestern part of the trench, 340 kilometers from the island of Guam. According to various data, its maximum depth ranges from 10,028 meters to 11,034 meters below sea level. The second deepest place in the ocean is also in the Mariana Trench. This is the Sirena Abyss, 200 kilometers east of the Challenger Abyss. Its maximum depth is slightly less, at 10,809 meters. Interestingly, the deepest place is not the closest place to the center of the Earth. Our planet is not perfectly spherical, but slightly flattened at the poles. Because the planet bulges along the equator, the radius at the poles is about 25 kilometers less than the radius at the equator. Therefore, the Arctic Ocean seafloor is closer to the center of the Earth than the bottom of the Challenger Abyss. Because of its enormous scale, the Mariana Trench has a unique environment with some dramatic variations in conditions. For example, at its very top, at a depth of only 414 meters, there is the Daikoku volcano. You can observe a rare phenomenon, a lake of pure molten sulfur underwater. The black substance boils at a temperature of 187 degrees Celsius. There is an even more amazing place. It is called Black Smokers. These are hydrothermal springs at a depth of about 1,600 meters that shoot out highly mineralized water under pressure of hundreds of atmospheres, with a temperature of up to 450 degrees Celsius. According to the hypothesis, 1 billion years ago, the black smokers became the cradle of life in the ocean. As for the existence of life in the Mariana Trench, scientists believe for a long time that it was possible only at relatively shallow depths. The high pressure at the very bottom of the Challenger Abyss and the temperature of about 1 degree were considered hostile conditions for any life. However, the first manned expeditions proved otherwise. 2 Americans, Jacques Picard and Don Walsh, were the first people to visit the Challenger Abyss in 1960. They descended to 10,918 meters in 5 hours on the deep-diving research bathyscaphe in Trieste. At this depth, the explorers spent 20 minutes and saw almost nothing because of the clouds of silt raised by the apparatus. However, they spotted a flatfish in the beam of the searchlight. It was a scientific sensation that they found signs of life at such depths. However, the mere spotting of fish was inconclusive, and the scientific community braced itself for years of waiting for the next expeditions, the wait until March 24, 1995. On that day, a Japanese probe, Kaiko, was lowered to the maximum depth of the depression and recorded a level of 10,911.4 meters. It also brought back samples of silt where scientists discovered microscopic living creatures. Foraminifera are single-celled organisms with a mineral skeleton. In July 2011, another research expedition used special models and drop cams, equipped with digital video cameras, and powerful flashlights to explore the deepest places in the ocean. The most impressive find was a gigantic foraminifera. It was huge for a single-celled organism, measuring over 10 centimeters in size. The next expedition took place in 2012, led by Hollywood filmmaker James Cameron in the one-person human-occupied vehicle, Deep Sea Challenger. Later, scientists discovered about 200 species of invertebrates in soil samples that were brought back. Finally, in December 2014, another expedition reached a depth of 8,145 meters and found complex multicellular organisms. Scientists found previously unknown fish that resembled snailfish. This fish is considered the record holder for deep water species. There are no other fish present there except for snailfish. The good news is that this species has no natural enemies at this depth. Now let's go almost to the opposite side of the globe to explore another interesting oceanic depression, the Puerto Rican Trench. It is located on the boundary between the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, at the site of a geological pit. It is the deepest depression in the Atlantic, with its lowest point at 8,376 meters. It is called the Milwaukee Depth in honor of the U.S. Navy ship Milwaukee, which first discovered it. The Navy ship Milwaukee was the ship that first found it. The notable geographical discovery was made on February 14, 1939, but the exact depth was not measured until 2018. It was found using state-of-the-art equipment, the Kongsberg EM-124 multi-beam sonar. Later, a retired U.S. Navy officer turned private equity investor, Victor Vescovo, completed the first manned dive into the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, on December 19, 2018. Like many other deep places in the ocean, it is a very turbulent area geologically. Seismic activity has already had catastrophic consequences for the neighboring islands, especially the island of Puerto Rico. On October 11, 1918, due to a 7.0 magnitude earthquake, a tsunami wave struck the west coast of the island. More than 100 people were killed, and the damage amounted to tens of millions of dollars. Some geoscientists believe in the possibility of a powerful volcanic eruption in the near future, which could cause a disaster. There is a geological anomaly associated with the Puerto Rican Trench. According to NASA, there is a super dense geological formation beneath the trench. It is so dense that it has an increased gravitational impact on the ocean's surface, causing it to subside slightly. This explains the negative impact on the accuracy of navigation devices. The fauna of the trench is fascinating. In 2012, a robotic bathyscaphe descended to the bottom of the trench and photographed a swarm of amphipods, small crustaceans. They were collected and brought to the surface for analysis. The same expedition recorded video of invertebrate creatures that, in no way, should be found there. Later, Dr. Stace Beaulieu of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution identified one by its soft, dark carcass, which measured between 10 to 20 centimeters in length. It turned out to be a sea cucumber. The genus is Peniagone. He also recognized a representative of the crustacean family Monopsidae in another creature. The fact of their existence at such extreme depths forced scientists to make serious adjustments to their theories about the survival of species. Now let's look into the Kermadec Trench in the Pacific Ocean. It is as gigantic a deep water trough in the Pacific as the Mariana Trench is in the Atlantic. It is located at the eastern foot of the Kermadec Islands and connects to the Tonga Trench in the north. Its length is about 1,200 kilometers. It was discovered in 1889 by an expedition of the British ship Penguin. The depth is also only slightly less than that of the Mariana Trench, at 10 or 47 meters. The trench is interesting due to the specific animal species discovered by research expeditions. For example, in 2012, the amphipods Alicella gigantea were found at the bottom of the depression. Their size puzzled and confounded scientists. They were up to 34 centimeters long, while most of the crustaceans found elsewhere are much smaller, measuring about 2 centimeters in length. The gigantic size is a paradox resulting from the extreme living conditions at great depths. Deep-sea fish of the Liparidae family were also found in the trench. To be more precise, it is a special biological species known as Lapparis cermiticensis. It is the second deepest fish, with a very narrow range of depths from 6,472 to 7,561 meters. The discovery of the pearlfish in the Kermadec Trench caused a sensation. It was found at a depth of 8,200 to 8,300 meters. This was an unusual find because pearlfish typically live much closer to the surface, at depths of 1,800 to 2,000 meters. How these creatures got to such extreme depths and survived remains to be explained. Our story has covered only a few pages from the book on exploring the deepest parts of the ocean. As technological capabilities develop, more and more dives are taking place. In 2020, as many as 6 manned expeditions took place to the Mariana Trench, so we can hope and wait for more amazing discoveries.